Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's so exciting. What a great crowd. It's so exciting to have everybody back. I mean, this is just one of the treasures and pleasures of my life to be part of PechaKucha, and this is an awesome audience. I hope you guys will enjoy us in our new home. Let me see raise a hand if you've never been to a PechaKucha before. Wow, look at that. All right, yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a little video that we created. It's about the length of a PechaKucha presentation. I hope you enjoy it.
It was almost like TikTok before there was TikTok. I wonder if anybody else has said that. You can use it. There's your pull quote, guys.
I knew this was going to come up.
PechaKucha.
PechaKucha.
PechaKucha. How'd I do?
PechaKucha. The name of that word is PechaKucha. Am I right? It must have been 10 or 11 years ago. Was it the Fleming?
I was at the Shelburne Museum.
I think the first time that I've seen it is just a recording.
I think, to be honest, I actually participated in one before I actually saw one.
My first experience of PechaKucha was actually as a presenter, new to town, didn't know anybody.
And I really liked it because I felt as if somebody just went in and pulled out the heart of everything she wanted to say and put it out there.
My PechaKucha presentation was around the role of art, culture, and speaking truth to power.
It was about my journey as a dancer in Vermont specifically.
I did a project, another photography project called Ruminations, where I'd taken 10,000 pictures of my bedroom.
I asked the audience to move around. They had different things to smell. They had different things to think about.
It was about my artwork, about giant Asian girls, based on how Asian woman feels in America.
My first PechaKucha presentation was about Media Free Week, which was this thing that my family did where we take a week off of media every month.
For the past 10 years, I've been photographing cars and trucks. And the people who get involved with these specialty cars and trucks are filled with passion.
My presentation was mostly about talking about my life and also what I do, where I come from, because as you can tell, I have an accent. I'm not originally from here, but I'm a community builder.
The city of Burlington was kind of revamping the Plan B TV South End. And so my collaborator and I worked with some folks who were living in low-income housing to make sure that their voices were included. And then we created a mural project.
So my presentation, long story short, was about learning to pay attention and practicing that. And the way that I practiced doing that was to basically follow different people unbeknownst to them around Burlington.
So my presentation was about creativity as a way to think, not just as a way to be creative, and creativity not being something you do before you design, but as you continue to design.
I've probably done like 6, 8 maybe. Yeah, I did one on ceilings. Once I did a whole wrap on birdhouses. You try to pace yourself and not get in other people's way, I guess.
The first time, it felt like 10 seconds and 10 minutes all at the same time.
Super fast. And it was like a ride. It felt like a little bit of a roller coaster ride.
It was so uncomfortable, but the digesting of information and sharing in an eloquent way happened really fast, like I was catching up with myself.
One picture, 20 seconds, was very rushed. And I think the adrenaline goes up when there are people in front of you.
If you can just kind of roll with it, it somehow doesn't seem quite as uncomfortable.
I think when I was getting ready to go on stage, I was a little nervous. I had a picture of the cat that I lived with and everyone laughed. And once you get that going, I think everything seemed to go pretty quickly.
I really used the 6 minutes and 40 seconds as a structure. It's kind of the sandbox to play within. And that practice was one of the most meaningful practices and experiences I've had in a really long time.
Just for the sheer joy of being up there on stage, it kind of justifies all this pain and angst that you've gone through, not just in the preparing it, but some of the projects take a long, long time, and you're building it up and you're not showing it to anybody and you're wondering if is it worth it?
That's just human instinct. We want to share what we think to others. If you just keep it yourself, it would not go anywhere.
Having the opportunity for an individual human being to share with an intimate group what they know, what they care about is really, really important and really, really needed during these times.
It gives other people validation that maybe the shared passion exists. And I think it gives permission for anything to be exhilarating.
Yes, I would. I would, absolutely.
I did it again, December 31st, 2019.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, I would.
Yeah, I would do it again.
I would do it again. Yeah.
Totally, absolutely. I can't wait to do it again.
I would happily do it again. I would love to do it again.
Of course, like, would I do it again? Of course.
I would definitely do this again. I thought it was really fun.
Would I do it again? Absolutely. It's a marvelous discipline, and it's really fun.
And I want to recognize and thank the team at the Media Factory for putting that together. They did an awesome job. So some of you may still be wondering, what is PechaKucha about? Well, it's about building community, and building community through the sharing of ideas, stories, and passions. We try to have 4 events a year when there's not a pandemic, and the format is unique. Each presenter gets exactly 20 slides, and each slide is on the screen for exactly 20 seconds. The slideshows are actually automated, so when they start, we can't even intervene. So 20 slides, 20 seconds, hence 6 minutes and 40 seconds. When the presenter begins their slideshow, the slides will move on automatically. You never know what you're going to get or experience at a PechaKucha Night, but you know that you're going to hear from people, your neighbors, your fellow Vermonters, about their passions. And it's these stories that help remind us of our own passions and spark that inspiration that might be lying low at the moment. Before we begin this evening, I'd like to take a brief moment to recognize someone very special to PechaKucha Night Burlington. On November 4th, 2010, the first PechaKucha Night was held at the Fleming Museum of Art. A few months earlier, a local Burlingtonian had experienced PechaKucha Night in another city, I believe it was Portland, and thought, this has to come to Burlington. Like, Burlington is the perfect town for a PechaKucha. And so she recruited a small group of compatriots and began PechaKucha Night Burlington. That person was Susan Weeks. Susan is the brand director at local design and branding studio Ruthless in Wellington. And since we have started PechaKucha, we've had 31 events and over 320 unique presentations. So tonight we want to recognize Susan for her inspiration and 12 years of service to the cause of sharing passions. So let's give Susan a round of applause. And we have a real big swag bag of PechaKucha accoutrement coming your way. Okay. Next, we'd like to take a moment to recognize the lead sponsor for whom we could not do PechaKucha without. These guys have been sponsoring us. Mascoma Bank now has been sponsoring PechaKucha for the last 4 years. We had an interim of pandemic, but they continue to support us at the far end of this. And the video that you saw, the ability to put these events on, all of that is thanks to their support. So I'd like to invite Pete Jones, Senior Vice President from Mascoma, to come up and just share some words.
Thanks, Chris. I won't take 6 minutes and 40 seconds. Believe me, we want to get on to the good stuff. But I did want to just see if you'd indulge a few words from your sponsor just for a moment. As Chris mentioned, Mascoma has been the lead sponsor for PechaKucha for, well, I guess 4 years, 7, 6, however long it's been when you had the, the pandemic in there, and we're really happy to do so. We're able to do these kinds of supportive sponsorships because we're a B corporation. We're, yeah, right on. Thanks. We're certified B, and we're also incorporated as a B. Our main office is in Lebanon, so we're incorporated in New Hampshire. But we don't have shareholders, right? We're a savings bank, mutually owned. We don't have shareholders, which means that we choose to share the wealth that can happen as a result of a well-run bank with our communities in the form of what we think of as a community dividend. Last year, we supported organizations like PechaKucha to the tune of over $2 million, about $2.2 million bucks, which is it seems not insignificant, so we're proud of that. We've been with PechaKucha here in Burlington since I was the only employee, and now we've got 3 branch offices, a lending office on Battery Street, and about 34 people that we employ in the area. So it's been really gratifying to see that happen. To those of you who know the bank and might do business with the bank, I thank you for that. And for those who don't, we could be a resource. Keep that in mind. Thank you for coming tonight. Thanks to the presenters. It's my honor to welcome you here tonight, and I hope that you enjoy the show. Thanks.
And just quickly, we also received generous support from the Media Factory, who's been videotaping these events since they began in 2010. Solidarity of Unbridled Labor, who donated their expertise for our branding, design, and promotion. Main Street Landing for providing us with a lovely new home. And longtime media sponsor, 7 Days. So PechaKucha Night is an international phenomenon. It's in almost 1,300 cities around the world. In September alone, there are going to be 100 PechaKucha Nights held throughout the world. So tonight, we're actually only joined by one other community, and I think it's in Michigan. But yeah, so PechaKucha is when we take the artistic and social pulse of the community through the lens of a very special group of people. These people are your neighbors, your family, your friends, perhaps a new acquaintance you've yet to make. They are our presenters. We have an amazing lineup this evening. How's the mic, by the way? Does the sound good? Yeah. Good. Okay. So let's get started. You guys ready? Yeah. All right. Our first presenter. And, you know, I have to thank you for that because it is pretty stressful being the first one up. And so I have to thank Katharine for doing that. But Katharine Montstream, her presentation, Cold Water Dipping in Winter.
Hi. My husband wanted me to do this about Pikachu and Machu Picchu, but I decided to do cold water dipping instead. It does seem fun to say. This is going to be my kid's dream because I can only talk for such a short time. So I'm ready to go, okay? I'm going to do this in a format of question and answer. So how did I start doing this? Well, it was this beautiful human who introduced me to it. She asked me to go for probably a year, and I kept coming up with excuses. She's been doing it every month for 13 years, and I thought she was such a badass, and I just really wanted to do it. It took me a long time to get enough courage. So how long do you stay in? Well, that can vary. It depends when the lifeguard blows the whistle or when the dog starts to bark, but usually between 2 or 3 minutes and maybe 1 second if I'm just not in the mood. But usually try to get immersed and just enjoy it and know that I'm going to feel really good after. So how long does it take to acclimate? Well, these lovely ladies look like they're in Bermuda, except for the ice. And they go almost every day or 2 or 3 times a week, and they are acclimated. They can stay in for 2 or 3 minutes and look like they're really enjoying themselves, which is really kind of crazy. So does chili dipping boost your immune system? It boosts your white blood cell count, and that forces your body to react. And over time, your body becomes better at activating its defenses. So there, we look like we didn't get COVID till the end. So I think it was in the summer when chili dipping had stopped. When did Red Hot Chili Dippers start? It started really in the beginning of the pandemic because we were all desperate to be together, to be outside and safe. And so this was something that we felt was relatively safe. And it didn't matter what the weather is. They would want to go no matter what. And I kept thinking, you're kidding. It's like a blinding snowstorm. And nope, they're there. How do we get in? Well, there's all kinds of implements. Sledgehammer's my favorite. We have an ice saw. We use branches to leverage and rocks to throw. This is anything to do to get in if it's safe and not too deep. This is getting ready for a community dip, which we invite people to come and join us and hope that they survive. Do you go every day? Well, I do, and it's only because if I don't, I'll have FOMO, and I'm sure you all know that's fear of missing out. So in this particular picture, I probably shouldn't have gone. I wasn't in the mood. You can tell I wasn't feeling it, but I do go every day, and yeah, it's pretty exhausting sometimes. How did you come up with the name? I didn't. It definitely was, I had all these dorky names like the Seal Club, the Polar Bear Club, the Ladies of the Lake, but it was my youngest daughter who came up with Red Hot Chili Dippers, and I was like, yep, that's it. That fits us perfectly. How do you freeze your hair? It's not that hard. It just has to be like 0 out, and you have to have a wet head. And then you have to stand upside down and just twirl your head around for a while and hope that you don't get brain freeze. There's rumors that it's been told that your hair will break off if it's frozen, and I want to say that that is not true. And also, your jeans will not break either if they're frozen and standing upside down. It does need to be about 0 degrees to do this. It doesn't work even at 5. You really have to have the cold weather. So couldn't I just take a cold shower? Why this experience? Because look at these friends, this community, and the challenge of trying to take selfies when it's 0 out. I mean, it's just a beautiful experience altogether. Does it help to hold your breath and puff out your cheeks while chili dipping? No, it actually doesn't help. But this is my daughter and her friend, and they are not acclimated. But they're working towards it. So people ask all the time, is this safe? Are you putting yourself at risk? I always know what's underneath because I've been there before, or you really get to know the landscape of the lake. Here we sledgehammered in, and the puffed out cheeks works for the younger one too. If it's really cold, just hold your breath. That is not the way Wim Hof teaches it, but that works when it's really cold. Can cold water immersion help with grief or loss? For Gisela in the black hat, it helped, and she had a big loss. And finding the cold water helped her reset, and it kind of shocks you into whatever mood you're in. It kind of makes it different, and I feel like it made her really hopeful again and really brought her through. We were really proud to be part of it. Is it true that National Geographic came and photographed us? Yes, because Gisela shared her story, we got onto VPR. Gisela's story then went NPR. NPR heard it, and then National Geographic wanted to know what we were doing and could they come out. This may be in the Northern Forest Canoe Trail story coming up. Where are all the men? People always ask, where are the men? Well, my men and my family definitely do not do this, but we did find some UVM boys. These are the dipping dogs that loved it, and they came all the time, and we were so happy to get some guys out there. There's lots of spin-offs. There's dip digs. There's all kinds of people that have been doing it, so it's been so fun. And my favorite part about chili dipping really isn't the cold water. It's the friendship and the community that we've built. These are kindred souls that are just so right there for you, and we have so much fun and laugh so much, and I feel like that's so needed. If you've heard that it reduces stress, it's true. If you survive, you will have a sense of calm. And believe it or not, it kind of gives you, I know this seems crazy, but like a warm, fuzzy feeling after. You feel like you just ran a marathon like in 3 hours and 5 minutes, because you're just like, yes, I did it, but it only took you like a minute. What's the point in going in every day? I answered this, someone asked me that. Endorphins, head clearing, the challenge, the defiance, the triumph, and the reset. See, 20 seconds is weird. Hey, is it true that it's a natural high? And I would say, well, the photo, picture's worth 1,000 words. And you tell me. It's like, yeah, I'm kind of cross-eyed. I've cut my shin, but I'm so damn happy there. And that's it. It's like, just brings me terrific, overwhelming joy, and I can't seem to lose that. It just stays with me, and it's been so good for me to do that. Yeah, thanks.
You are a great crowd, man. I appreciate the support. That was an awesome presentation. Thank you for leading us off with that. Our next presenter is Sarah Krinsky, the story of collaborating and building a sense of community.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. This is actually my first PechaKucha Night, and so I definitely have the PechaKucha jitters, so bear with me. But again, I'm really excited to share this story with all of you, so let's get it started. So in May of 2019, my husband Aaron and I moved to Bennington, Vermont. We had just finished grad school in Syracuse, and we knew little to nothing about the southern region of Vermont, but a friend of ours lured us here, and we felt pretty prepared to move to Vermont given our Birkenstocks, our Subaru Forester, and our bikes. So we were told we were ready to go. About a weekend, we're both avid outdoor people, and so we signed up for the Bennington Battlefield Celebration 5K. It really brought us a good sense of community. We wanted to be in a place where we could set some roots for ourselves, and anytime you're in a marathon, there's already that sense of excitement, adrenaline, and community. We couldn't wait for the winter season as snowboarders, and even though we vowed to never put skis on, we quickly found ourselves getting lost and immersed in the woods and cross-country skiing right at Prospect Mountain. But as a New Yorker, I feel like when you move to a small town, you always want to do more and stay busy, and so I turned a passion of mine, which was collecting vintage clothing, into a business. So I rented a booth at Camelot Village in Bennington, where 100 vendors and myself shared this shaggy green carpet, probably from the 60s. And I got to put together my curated collection of vintage clothing. But again, it was all about kind of finding this sense of community, and I found that with some other hoarders. Oh, wow, that's pixelated. Okay. So I wanted to get the word out there about my business, and I joined the Jamaica Farmers Market. It was there that I really connected and bonded with some other fellow women vendors and artisans, and we found ways to collaborate. So fast forward a couple of months, my now business partner, Brie Magnifico, we collaborated on a series of candles. She owns a lifestyle brand, and we both had ties to the city, fashion, and retail, and we thought, why not? Let's combine what I do with vintage, take some vintage vessels, and pour candles into them. Fast forward again, we went through a whole pandemic, and we started talking about the conversations that I had with the small women business owners that I met at the market. And we all wanted to basically share a storefront, but we knew the cost was going to be outrageous. So we were fortunate enough to find a space and pitch what we call W Collective. So W Collective essentially is a community of women plus vendors. It's all inclusive. And all we do is share a space together and we uplift one another. So again, it was really finding these different ways to create different senses of communities and start laying the groundwork for setting roots in Bennington. And truly the backbone of W Collective are all of the vendors that we were able to bring together in our community. So many of them being local in Vermont, many of them being transplants from New Mexico, from Queens, really from all over, and providing them with a sense of getting to share the product that they carry and also have it in our store and share it with our community. And so we knew this was going to be something different in Bennington, something that had never been done before. And we really wanted to tell our community what we were doing. So it wasn't just about housing vintage clothing or home decor, but really bringing more sustainable and ethically made products, as well as providing a really fun atmosphere. So this is a picture that's near and dear to my heart because this really felt like a time where our community came alive. We had so many people that attended our soft opening on July 9th of 2021. And it just felt so different from anything we had experienced. Of course, it was post-pandemic, so there was also a celebration of getting together. And we expanded W Collective by welcoming our coffee roasters, another way to encourage more people in our community to get to know what we were doing. So we partnered with 1A Coffee Roasters in Wilmington, Vermont, who are working on being the first certified bee coffee roasters in the state of Vermont. So we wanted our focus not to just only be about having a space for vendors, but also for other future partners and collaborations. We continued to spread the word and went on EQX, a station that we both loved nearly, and so we got the word out to more of Southern Vermont, and through the Sunday Brunch series with Joy, we were able to spread that word. And we didn't only just want to stick to retail, we really wanted to provide more community service, something that we felt we needed because we had moved from the city, and we wanted more events and more things for the people in our community to participate in. So everything from creative wellness journaling to quilting to highlighting women winemakers, and finally, bridging connection with Bennington College. So for many years, there'd always been a little bit of a separation between the college and downtown, and so we started a student artist series with visual and performing artist students. And so for a whole month, students can display their artwork at the shop, have a grand opening ceremony, and then receive 100% of the profit. And I know for Bree, as an alumna of Bennington College, it was a really significant moment in her life, and also for me, because I work at the college as well. It felt so incredible to be able to once again pull together our community that had once felt kind of separated, but now was starting to come together. In January of 2021, just a couple of months of opening, we were recognized by our community as young professionals in business. Again, it felt really nice not only to be recognized, but just feel the support that we not only felt from our friends and family, but from the community that we were working so hard. And then recently, in June of 2022, I had the opportunity to continue to spread the message about W Collective and everything that we've been passionate and working on at the Vermont Womenpreneurs Summit, Mother of Invention. And again, it was another opportunity to connect and be inspired by so many other women business owners and to see their passion. This past July, it's almost 2 months now, we celebrated 1 year, which felt like such an incredible milestone, having started our business at the sort of tail end of the pandemic, but also through all of the ups and downs that we had experienced, working full-time while continuing this passion project, but finally getting our business open to 6 days a week. So I end this story because it's still continuing, but every night when I sort of close the door and I see our big W, it really puts an impact on all of the ways that I've been able to find a purpose in Vermont and also continue to build community, which is an ongoing project, and I just look forward to the future.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next presenter, Mieko Wisniewski, is presenting on the sexual lives of buildings and spaces. And he'll explain that provocative title.
For the record, this is a different shirt than I was wearing in the film. Okay. So you don't believe that buildings can have sex? More than you think, not as much as they should, just like the rest of us. The solids and voids, careful architectural terms there, are not just rubbing up against each other. There's passion, there's gravity, there's unconsummated desire. It all started on Willard Street in 1992. I was struck by the tenderness and the yearning of these two towers. How, like Pyramus and Thisbe, they just want to come together, but gravity prevents them. But buildings will always be side by side and in a relationship with each other. Now, Picasso and Cubism shows us that the parts and pieces don't always get assembled in the way that you would imagine. They can be unusual. Buildings can be very fluid in their gender and in their sexual identity. And so you just got to accept that. You won't always figure it out. Just pay attention and check it out. Now, in spite of that, the solids always seem to rule. They loom over the sky. They're connected to the churches, the power structures, and the money. And the solids like to gather together and loom over the landscape. But there's actually more voids than there are solids, but they don't stand out as much. You have to search them out. You have to look for the spaces in betwixt and between. And I've spent many a long hour hanging out in voids in the day and in the night. But the solids and the voids, they get lonely. They want to hang out with other solids and voids. And so if you place yourself in just the right place, you might see them coming together in these spaces between the solids and the voids, such as the church tower right there and in between a void of a building. So you get a solid and a void happening together. Now, if you've had 12 years of Catholic school, including 4 years of Jesuits with no girls in high school, I might be tempted to spend a lot of time searching for what architects would call penetrations of solids and voids. And so sometimes you can find it, and it's actually, reaches out over those boundaries. The one on the top left, it was like I was just caught before this rainstorm, and there was this two weather fronts and these two buildings rushing towards each other. The weather fronts collided. I got thunder and lightning and rain all over me, but they forever cannot touch. They cannot move. On the bottom, you see that building codes mandate exits. So there's all this intertwining and embracing of our buildings. In a winter boatyard, there's a lot of cruising that's going on. And the only sex I found in any of the suburbs was this little strip mall getting it on with some trees. Now, the scene and the feeling can change very much with the point of view of the camera as well as the light. So on the left, you've got the solid really leaning in, and the void's kind of like, whoa, I don't know. But on the right, they've gotten a bit more relaxed. They're having a good time. And down below, the scene really shifts with the point of view. So because solids, because they can't move, the only way they can share bodily fluids is with clouds or with channeling water. And so, which is kind of mystical, and it was kind of like my 5th grade Catholic sex manual, which basically made it sound like people never touched. It just happened through the air. The agricultural and the industrial wants to get on the scene. It doesn't all happen downtown. So on the upper right, after a hard day of work, the farm hands get together and they compare their equipment. Solids and voids can get kind of bored and want to spice things up a bit. So on College Street, a block apart, you can get some kinky bondage going on. And also some piercings and some, strap-ons and sex toys, all getting added on to your building. Buildings do practice safe sex, although the one on the top, it needs a little more education because it's not really protecting the right thing, and it has to have a discussion with the partner who wants to go bareback and show off the endowment. I was once counseled that if you want somebody to spend quality time down in your solid or void, you got to trim the landscaping. So somebody didn't get the message here, but I think that's a beautiful case of snuggling up there between the landscape and the building. It's very comfortable. Now, this red building's living the cubist dream, but it's trapped. It can't connect to anybody because it can't move. So acting as a flaneur, and definition will come later, I slowly twisted the camera because finally they can meet their partner and they can tango together. The most perfect example of having sex without touching is the Annunciation. And so I've been really impressed with light caressing buildings and moving across the dark materials of them over seasons and over time. And so a flaneur is somebody who is a dandy who walks around town looking and poking into things, just paying attention, trying to see deeper. So that's what I've been doing with this project, is just trying to see things in areas that you wouldn't normally expect. Now once you've seen this stuff, you can't unsee it. You're all gonna go home tonight, and you're gonna walk around Burlington tomorrow, and you're gonna be like, I am just seeing sex everywhere. And so the final tableau, if I've got it right here, boy, this one's lasted a long time. There we go. So it's starting top and going sideways. Oh, darling, that was wonderful. Yeah, baby, boy, that was real nice. Oh, where's the condom? I lost the condom, I can't find it. Then 9 months later, a garden shed is born and shared between the families and the proud parents. Thank you.
Our next presenter, Mieko Ozeki. Again, all right. Fostering connection and inspiration among women in business in Vermont.
If I fall asleep, I apologize. I've been up all day doing connecting, so I'm happy to be here. So I'm going to get started, okay? So hello everyone, my name is Mieko Ozeki, and I am one of the co-founders and chief connectors of Vermont Womenpreneurs, a supportive community of women-owned businesses that aspire towards collaboration over competition in the Green Mountain State. And tonight I want to talk about building authentic, sincere connection in the sense of basically making sure that folks have the opportunity to interact with one another in a way that they feel that they're not being depleted. But before I talk about how the Vermont Womenpreneurs came about, I like to talk about, well, how the we comes from me. I am a mom, I'm a wife, I'm also a solopreneur, an advocate, and a fifth-generation Chinese-Japanese American standing out in a white space. And so those things have informed me being present. And as Serena Williams says, you gotta evolve in your roles. So in 2017, I left a toxic work environment and had lucked into a retreat at Knoll Farm called the Better Selves Fellowship. And at the time, after leaving, I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do with myself? And I sat in front of my computer, and amongst all these other people who are seeking respite, I was going, what am I good at? What is my pathway? What am I gonna do next? And so words came up. I love to convene, connect, collaborate, as well as celebrate. I took those words, I had no idea what was gonna happen, but then I took this solopreneur workshop with Lisa Wood at Center for Women in Enterprise, and she said something like, you know, the thing about being a solopreneur is you're trapped in your head. You're the only one accountable to yourself. What if you all met together, kept each other accountable? Convene, why not? So in 2018, I organized our first Womenpreneurs meetup. Didn't really quite have a name, but we just met up at Fletcher Free Library and just started sharing what small business owners were doing. And it was small coffees. And this is where Kismet, where I met my co-founder and also PechaKucha alum, Bethany Andrews-Nichols, who basically said, you know, I wish there was a place where I could just it's like a science fair. Like I want to demonstrate what my business is like without anyone interrupting. And I was like, cool. I happen to have a co-working space that was like, we're looking for an event. Why don't we do it? And so we hosted our first showcase event in June 2018. 20 women showed up and shared their stories. We crowded the space, and women were sharing how their journeys of becoming entrepreneurs came about. And everything from, it wasn't a pitch, it was all about, why did I come here? Why did I become passionate about my business? And the thing is, I was like, I don't know if this is gonna work. Well, it did, because all of a sudden our coffees went from a few people to a lot of people coming because they had word of mouth. In social media, people were pull quoting and talking about what they heard about other businesses. They wanted to be able to share an experience of working with one another. And this was just the start. We hosted more showcases and we filled the space with more stories, everything from women who already been in business for several years and the kind of like, yeah, you saw this facade, I'm really great, but really this is really what happened, to also the ebbs and flows, as well as people who are just starting out and talking about their business. Our coffees got bigger. And in our circle, one of the things, the cadence that we do, is I always say, there are 3 things you need to bring. Your name, what your business is, hopefully you don't forget those 2. And the third one is share one of 3 things. Share an update, an aspiration, or an ask. And by doing that, women got to share in an audience without the kind of full, and a sort of accountability as a community holding that. They get to share what their needs are. And what's interesting is finding that the people who are creating connection that way by saying, oh, maybe I can't offer that service, but maybe I can tell somebody to come and connect with this person. And it feels real, not like, if most people know, networking sort of feels icky, feels transactional, sweaty palms, all that stuff, and people waiting for you to tell their story. But what's nice is that when people exchange like this and share those aspirations, people hold that and they're able to create relationship immediately. And as you can see, there's a lot of smiles, there's a lot of laughter, there's a lot of joy. It doesn't feel like your typical business network. Now, I'm not to say that I love business networks, but I also know that this is really important to be able to come out into your community and share who you are and who you presently are. So this is before the pandemic. 2 days before, we were like, oh, we heard about this thing called COVID. We don't know what's going on. How is that going to affect our business? And then we went to Zoom land. And Zoom land for 2 years. But that was a kind of a space where we got to hear where women were at. We were rooting for people to thrive instead of surviving. Finally, we got to a point where we were able to do in person our last summit, and we had 230 women show up for 12 storytellers to be able to share their stories about how they some of them starting their own businesses, some of them been in business for a while. And also, I just want to note that whenever we throw an event, I make sure that 90% of the event, at least, or 100% of the event, you will see a women-owned business is reflected in it. Whether through photography, whether through our flowers, whether through signs. One of the things I thought was a really interesting story is watching women who basically never met each other, but realize they're in the same community and start working together. So I'm going to share what the last part I asked of everyone. What is an aspiration I have? Well, I know that I have to get out of Chittenden County, and I need to be able to work with a lot of womenpreneurs across the state. So my goal is hopefully I join the 251 Club and meet all of the womenpreneurs out there. So thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mieko. Okay, so we're going to just take a 15-minute break, and please head on outside, visit the bar if you like, or you can stay here. I'll turn on some lights. Well, you guys ready for part 2? All right. Okay, so starting off, our second half is Charlie Messing, and his talk is Meeting the Mighty Fall in Manchester, England. Charlie.
Hi, kids. Oh, this is great. Excuse me. Okay, just to tell you, this is about The Fall. They were a band, a post-punk band. They existed from 1977 to 2018 when the leader died. That's the only thing that could stop them. He kept getting new people when his band grew up and had kids and went away. He would kept going. Anyway, so the first slide, it's a poster. It's a mural, excuse me. A mural of his face that's been done in honor of him in the suburb of Manchester that he lived in all his life, Prestwich. And that's Mark Edward Smith, M-E-S. And the first slide is 20 seconds of a band that made 30 albums. Okay. Yes, it's next to a fish and chip shop, a really good one. Number 8 is its address. And you can almost read what's written on there because it's in Mark's handwriting. I went over there because I got interested in them during the lockdown. I got fascinated with this band. This is the river that runs through Manchester. As you can see, it's not quite in its natural shape. But the Romans had it 2,000 years ago. They did some work on it back then. Yeah, the river. And English, it's the same language, but they do things that we wouldn't do. They have a different sense of humor. Like, you would never see this in America. And America is rude as hell. But they would never do this. It's a spicy soda. They would never do this. I was just amazed at the difference between, their stiff upper lip, they're very polite, very polite. 4 girls go past you at high school age, not a peep. 4 girls, American, go past you, you can hear it. This is Forrester's, a pub which he hung out in. That's one of my guides, Andy. We went in there to wait for the fish and chip shop to open. And the next one has the guy who organized the Facebook page, Kevin. Mostly you see shoulder, but actually it's a whole guy. And that's Kevin McMahon and Andy Clark. It was just great that we stumbled into this pub because one of the guitar players from the fall, who had been, this is the tribute band. They do all four fall songs. He said, doing your old songs is like look back bores. He was never interested in doing his old stuff, so they call themselves the Look Back Bores. And they play every year, except for because of COVID. This is leading to a mini mall of enterprising young people, and going up the stairs, I got a good T-shirt up there that says in sparkly letters, I can't even think straight. This is tributes to Mark. He had a tatty sweater, I believe they called it. But these are tributes. I mean, he is one of the heroes of Manchester music. And Manchester itself, this is my guide, Simon Coyne. He helped me find so much and not be lost, because even though we share a language, there's a slanguage barrier. A big one, and anything you say might not know. This is his nose on the left. He's showing me the post box. This is the only thing that was left standing after the IRA blew a gigantic bomb in 1996. They blew a big hole in Manchester, and they have a grudge. This is another beautiful pub. I mean, it was, every one of them had character. There were no McPubs. You know what I mean? Everything, some of these have been here, for instance. This next one, the old Wellington, it's from 1500. The glass is original. They had to move it 500 feet because the foundation was messed up by the 96 bomb. But the glass in those top, you can't even see clearly through them. It's such old glass. And this, of course, you can't read that fast. But yes, the old Wellington existed in 1552 when Edward VI was on the throne. It's just amazing the history that they have. We don't have hardly anything. The Romans were there 2,000 years ago, and there's all these big buildings left that it's a big city. They started out being industrial, and now the big thing is tourism, music, football. Football, of course, we call soccer. They think our football is ridiculous. You throw it. You throw a football. The Corn Exchange, gigantic thing, and it was the Corn Exchange, and now it's a place where bands can play. It's a place where shows can happen. It's just, they're revivifying this old industrial city that the industries have left. This is Victoria, who, referring to this leaden statue, Mark said, Victoria is a slug on Piccadilly Square. He was very free with his language. Now, I could not believe some of the airport things. They had this, they were regular tuna salad sandwiches like this above, but this bottom row, I went, what is that? Is that tuna salad, or is this candy for the kids shaped like a sandwich? I could not believe it. And then this is me waiting for my final plane to come back to Vermont. And if you want to hear the fall, they're all over YouTube. If you want to hear me, I'm all over YouTube. I mean, there's billions of things, and the fall did 30 albums, and I've got almost all of them now.
Thank you, Charlie. Our next presenter is Deena Frankel, diving into the layer cake, Chittenden County, from the bedrock up.
Hi, folks. So Charlie took us to some old music and an old city, and I'm going to take us back 450 million years. Okay, thanks. So when I first moved here in 1995, I spent a lot of time, and since then, in the wilds of Vermont. But the pandemic transformed my relationship with the woods and the water, and I'm going to tell you about a critical piece of that transformation, the Vermont Master Naturalist Program. In the early part of the pandemic, really in the first 2 years, is that the early part, my solace was to find places to walk that I had never been before. I used all trails and the atlases and the town websites. And then a walking friend of mine said, why don't you go a little deeper and apply to this Vermont Master Naturalist Program? Well, I didn't think I would be accepted to this. I had a lot of passion, but no experience, no qualifications. I was thinking this was smoke and mirrors when I applied. I had this one thing I had done that seemed relevant. I had edited and laid out this book about Native Americans in the Champlain lowlands a few years ago, but it was really about my passion. And to my surprise, I got accepted. So I was drawn to this program because it was different from academic natural science with its silos like botany and geology and ornithology. This was about connections. The executive director, Alicia Daniels, calls it the layer cake approach. So the Vermont Master Naturalist started back in 2016. There are 9 programs around the state now that have either graduated students or are going on. And each one is very place-based, very specific to its community. My class of 18 people had a lot of age diversity, recent college graduates to retirees. Half of us had studied natural science, half of us were lifelong learners like me, and a third of us were teachers now. And one of my classmates said what I think, I found my peeps. Our teacher, Alicia Daniel, led our field days supported by experts in the relevant disciplines, and it was very hands-on, learning things like plant keying, tree ID. We were learning to read the landscape. In 5 days out in the field, we visited these special places around Burlington. I had been to them all, but I really didn't know them. Rock Point, Star Farm, Ethan Allen Park, Ethan Allen Homestead, and the town of Wisniewski. And we each also chose a project, a conservation or education project to volunteer. There were 2 books that rocked my world during this year. I read that Tom Wessel's book 3 times, and each time my ability to read the landscape and decode the story of place has increased. And that this woodland, wetland, wildland is like the Rosetta Stone of our natural environment. Each session, I was startled by some pattern that I saw emerging, like the day that we walked along the Champlain Thrust Fault. And I realized how many times I had seen this and not understood that the old rocks were under the new rocks, and that was how the Champlain, how the Green Mountains had been built. I didn't really understand the concept of natural environments until I saw on the bluffs above the beach how these specific plants and these specific stones were of this place. I probably never noticed the green spots on these aspen leaves, and now I know that a leaf mining insect recruits a bacterium to block the death of those leaves so it can keep on eating. Now, isn't nature crazy? Have you seen skunk cabbage come up first out of the snow in the wintertime? The skunk cabbage flower produces enough heat to raise the temperature around it by up to 35 degrees. bringing the pollinators, the first pollinators in. Holy thermogenesis Batman. On my many pandemic walks, I stumbled on old cemeteries, cellar holes, wells, farm implements, and now I understand how all the Vermont landscape has been reshaped by human hands over time, and I better how to read these places. The projects and collaborations by Vermont master naturalists are really far-reaching in their impacts. For example, a collaboration at Champlain Elementary School is supporting a wildlife corridor, native plant nursery, and other environmental projects. High-impact conservation projects are happening throughout the footprint of Vermont master naturalist, from hands-on invasive species mitigation to fostering native plants and pollinators, and dozens of field walks open to the public are increasing our public awareness of these wild places and what they mean to us. It isn't enough to just conserve land. Many animals need large, contiguous corridors for their survival. In several places, including in Burlington, master naturalists are working with local groups using the Vermont Natural Resources Atlas to move from parcels to contiguous corridors. And in some places, master naturalists are changing the way we do planning, like this example in Montpelier, where graduates been central to the creation of a new master plan for this Blanchard Park. I think I used to walk through the land, and now when I walk in the woods, I feel as if I am being there rather than passing through. I see the pieces, the patterns, and the processes emerge like words on a page. I will carry this new way of seeing through the rest of my life. Thank you.
And our last presenter, rounding up the evening tonight, is Tim Brookes. Save the writing, save the culture. Tim.
Thank you. I'm not actually going to say anything about this. This is just here to prove that I actually do the things that I say I do, because, of course, who can trust a slideshow these days? All right. Fire in the hole. So, I can't see what's going on. Oh, there we are. Yes, so 13 years ago, I began carving endangered alphabets. I began carving pieces of text in writing from cultures that were themselves endangered. And this was my way of trying to draw attention to them. Having carved them, I then painted them. You can tell this photograph was taken 13 years ago because A, my hair is not white, and B, if I had such bad posture now, my neck would be killing me for the rest of the week. This was part of an exhibition that I did, my first exhibition, which actually was mounted in Wisniewski in 2010. And there were 13 pieces of text from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And this is the Samaritan script, which was so in danger that at one point there were only 4 families left that were using it. So my credo is really from the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, where it says indigenous peoples, which really means everybody, have the right to use, develop, transmit everything, including their writing systems. And I should point out that even though that declaration has been passed, no country in the world observes it. One of the first projects I got involved in was in Bangladesh, where a number of indigenous groups in the hill tracts have been surrounded by the military and cut off and forced to be educated in the national language rather than their own languages. So this is a carving that I did from the UN Declaration in one of the indigenous languages, Chakma. I sent it out there and it was put up on the wall, and that's when I realized that art is also signage. that when these people see their own writing for the first time in their lives, it gives them presence and authority. And Champlain College students and I created this 6-language dictionary for children in the Hill Tracts, 4 indigenous languages and Bangla and English. And now there are 17 schools there, which are mother language schools, where the kids are learning in their own language and their own script, instead of literally being beaten for not paying attention when they couldn't understand what the teacher was saying. Then I started realizing, wait a second, I'm doing all this stuff with indigenous peoples overseas. What about here, right? What about our own? And so I began working with a number of Abenaki people, and this was a card that I was asked to make, their statement to the world: we are still here. Many of my students at Champlain believed they had to be extinct by now. And so I started doing carvings in Abenaki and then donating them to the Abenaki tribal centers around the state. I didn't know there were tribal centers around the state. They are very, very low profile because, of course, they were the victims of genocide, and the women were victims of forced sterilization in the 1930s and 40s. And this is me up in Missisquoi, in Swanton, sorry, presenting a carving to the Missisquoi band. And then I worked with a brilliant young woman of Abenaki extraction to create this illustrated dictionary where each page is not just a word, by the way that the words were chosen by an Abenaki after-school youth group, but also illustrate kind of the way of life as they see it. So then people began asking me, well, where can I find out about these extraordinary writing systems and their cultures? And I said, well, there really isn't anywhere. This is stuff that I'm finding out as I go along. This, by the way, is from the Philippines. And so I created this online atlas of endangered alphabets, where you can go and you can click on the Google pin, and you know how that stuff works, and learn about these various cultures, because every script bears the history and the geography and even the climate of the culture that created it. Another project I'm working on is the Red List of Endangered Alphabets. So we're trying to document every writing system in use in the world today and assess to what degree it is active or threatened. Speaking of threatened, this is a young boy who created this protest poster in calligraphy when the Chinese announced in 2020 that Mongolian children in China were going to have to learn Chinese rather than Mongolian. And that was so powerful. What it says is a foreign language is a tool. Our language is our soul. And so I carved that and I gave this to the guy who is single-handedly trying to run an information center about what's happening in Inner Mongolia from New Jersey. And so to work against that, we started creating a tabletop game. And the cards that you can see here are all taken from Mongolian culture and Mongolian mythology and history. And the game is called Ulus, Legends of the Nomads. And there it is. The game mat is like a representation of the nomadic life. You actually move around it with the seasons. And those things there that look like bones are in fact bones. They're sheep's ankle bones, or ankle knuckles that are used throughout Asia. That's all I have time for right now, except to say that we are, as always, desperately in need of support. But I'm going to leave these here, and anybody who wants to come up and see this stuff, I then promise I will talk about it. And this has been 6 minutes and however many seconds of a 9-hour talk, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Tim. All right, so that wraps up the evening of presenters. I'd like for you to all join in me in giving a round of applause to our presenters this evening. I want to mention that we have a new website, pknburlington.com. It just went live. And on that site, you can learn about presenting, how to sign up to be a presenter, watch videos about of presenters, and learn about upcoming events. So if you're interested in all things PKN, this is a great place to start your search. Tonight's presentations, as well as presentations from all the PKNs, most all the PKNs from previous years, can be found on the Media Factory website, PechaKucha Night Burlington videos, and you can see a sampling there on their website. So you can visit that at the mediafactory.org. I want to say thank you once again to our sponsors, Mascoma Bank, Media Factory, Solidarity of Unbridled Labor, Main Street Landing, and 7 Days. Thank you so much for making this happen.